The year was 1996, and 1996 was a very weak year for heavy metal. Stay tuned to find out all the reasons why. But no matter the situation, there were still some great bands, some great music to come in and save the day. Find out who next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to another episode of the Metal Dude Abides. Tonight, we are going to go through the best heavy metal music of 1996 and go through the Grammy Awards to see who should have won the awards back then. Now, we always like to keep it real on this channel. I like to keep it 100 with my audience. 1996 is not a banner year for heavy metal, in my humble opinion. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, if you've been following the episodes over the last couple of years, traditional heavy metal, for the most part, is dead. A lot of the big bands of the 80s have either kind of grown old and aren't really putting out the great music they used to. They've broken up. All sorts of reasons. The radio stations have dumped everything, right? It's a bad time for traditional heavy metal. And along those lines, it's really been tough for the hair metal movement. Now, I get it. There was some awful stuff in the hair metal movement. But like with anything else, there was a lot of great bands that got swept out with all those bad bands. Now, we were told the answer to all this was going to be grunge, but grunge has already had its peak and is on the downhill slide. And one of the interesting phenomenons that I'll never quite understand, American thrash metal has gone haywire. I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but back in the day, you had the big four: Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. And I don't know, you could have put money on this bet. They all kind of go south at the same time. Not that they're putting out terrible music, but they're not putting out the kind of music they were making just a few years ago. There's a couple of secondary bands in there as well that kind of changed up their sound, kind of trying to escape the axe that is the record labels and radio stations going after heavy metal bands. Looking at You, Overkill, another one of those bands that just really kind of changes their sound and isn't nearly as good as they were. So all of a sudden, thrash metal, which would have been the perfect bridge between, the fading out of the traditional hair metal, traditional heavy metal, into the more extreme metal. So the landscape in 1996 is very interesting. And it was very difficult for a person like me who was used to having heavy metal at your fingertips. It was on the radio. It was, it was everywhere. Now it had gone completely back to being underground. And so you have a lot of brand new bands, a lot of extreme metal, all kind of popping up on these labels all over the place. Major labels, nowhere to be found. The other thing that happens in this period of my life is me and Mrs. Metal Dude decided to have couple of little metal babies. So we probably were listening to a little bit more Barney than heavy metal through this stretch. So it was really hard to really do a lot of digging. We didn't have the internet yet. We were busy, putting together formula, changing diapers, and doing all the other things. So this is also an era where I pay attention to heavy metal, but I'm not doing nearly as much digging into metal as I used to, which is really unfortunate because, as I said, it really required a lot of digging to kind of get into that underground movement. So this is a little bit of a time where I would say heavy metal has gone kind of off the rails just a tad. But as with all things, there's still some great heavy metal music that's coming out. And when you have a bad year like this, and sometimes it just randomly happens, like once a decade, you're going to have a year that just doesn't quite live up to some of the other years. 1995 is a great year. 1997 is a great year. It's just 1996 that's the problem. But there's always opportunities for bands that might have otherwise been ignored or maybe not been given the credit they're due. So there's still some great music, and we're going to go through all of that. But as we like to do, the first thing we're going to look at is who did the Grammys think were the best heavy metal of 1996? Let's start there. All right, 1996, Best Heavy Metal Performance nominees for the Grammys. The first nominee, Rage Against the Machine, with a song called Tire Me. I got to be very sensitive here. I don't like to ridicule other types of metal, but I just have to get this out in the open. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, if you've seen any of my other videos, you may have already figured out not really a big fan of the new metal movement. But let me get even more specific, because I think there are some great new metal bands. Slipknot, for instance. I kind of have a rule of thumb. The more it raps, the more it's crap. If you are a new metal band that really leans in to the rap side of it's like, let's put a rap song together and just put some heavy, crunchy riffs in it. It's not for me. I don't like rap. I listen to a lot of different music, people. I was raised in the country. I listened to country western music when I was a kid. I can live through anything, but I've never developed a taste for that kind of rap. So Rage Against the Machine, Tire Me, I just think this is an awful song. I don't think it is anywhere. It's not even the best song on this album. I am not a Rage Against the Machine fan for all the things I just got through listing. I don't like those really rappy bands, but even Rage Against the Machine, every once in a while, the old broken clock theory, every once in a while they'd hit something. If I'm going to pick any song off this album, it would be Bulls on Parade, right? That's not a terrible song. That's a pretty good song. I've listened to that song in the past, pretty decent. But Tire Me is terrible. The second nominee, Pantera, from Suicide Note Part 1. This comes off the Great Southern Trendkill album. And again, this is a little bit of a head scratcher. There's so many better songs on this album than that one. I'm not sure what the Grammy saw in that particular song, but spoiler alert, I probably will be talking about another Pantera song when we get to my choices for Best Song of the Year, so stay tuned to that. Back to our new metal rap awards. Another band I really don't get into, Korn. They are the third nominee with the song Chutes and Ladders. Not only am I not really into Korn, but I found this really interesting. Korn actually has an album in 1996. I think it was titled Get Peachy or something like that. Chutes and Ladders comes off the first Korn album that was released in October of 1994. One of the things that we're always criticizing the Grammys about is, what are you doing nominating a song that came out in 1994 in 1996, 2 years ago? That's a little bit dated for my past, so come on, let's stick with the program Grammys. Let's keep the pace going. It seems like the Grammys, in particular, oftentimes don't really discover a band until after the fact, and then they try to scramble around. And this is an old song, don't know why it's being nominated in 1996. The fourth nominee is actually from a band I like, White Zombie. But the song they pick, again, is a bit of a head-scratcher. It's called I'm Your Boogeyman. For those of you who are as old as I am, you'll know that this is a cover from the old KC and the Sunshine Band. Okay, I just got through criticizing the Grammys for putting on songs that are clearly not produced in the year that they're giving it to. The other thing I really have a problem with the Grammys is they love their covers. It's almost like, okay, heavy metal, if you want to cover a different style of music or a different band, we'll give you credit, rather than giving you credit for your own material. This was not a good song when KC and the Sunshine Band put it out. It's not really my cup of tea for White Zombie either. Again, there are better songs off that album than that cover song. And then finally, if you haven't had enough of Mr. Rob Zombie, he gets a second nomination for a duet he does with the immortal Alice Cooper, Hands of Death, Burn Baby Burn. Once again, broken record alert. I like Rob Zombie, like Alice Cooper. I don't think this reflects their best work. I think there was a lot better songs in 1996 than this one. I think there was better Rob Zombie songs than this one. This is the one they went with, probably again because of the star power of Alice Cooper combining with Rob Zombie, so they probably just nominated it for that reason. But I didn't think that song really grabbed me. Honestly, this is one of the weakest group of nominees I've ever seen the Grammys produce. I really don't like any of this, but if I had to pick one of the songs off here, I guess I would take Suicide Note Part 1 from Pantera. Pantera had better, but this is a pretty decent song. Overall, when we get to our best songs and albums of the year, I think we'll be able to top this list pretty easily. And speaking of which, since the Grammys put together a list of 5 songs, let's start this one out with my top 5 songs of 1996. All right. If you've been following the channel, one of the things we're doing now is we're not doing that kind of vague heavy metal performance nonsense that the Grammys are doing. The whole point of these videos is to make the Grammys actually better. And so I think it's better to nominate songs for songs, albums for albums. So let's talk about the top 5 heavy metal songs of the year. Our first nominee, Metallica, from Until It Sleeps. Now, I know back in the beginning of this video, I talked about how Metallica kind of jumps the shark, not really very good after the Black Album. Their album Load was generally loathed by the heavy metal crowd back in the day. And it was an odd time. Let me tell you, Metallica has this big debut video coming out for Until It Sleeps, I believe, and they all come out with short hair. Shocking look. And they're wearing like mascara. It was not a good look. And I think the entire Metallica universe all at once said, "What the hell happened to you?" Anyway, at least off this album, there are a couple of salvageable songs. Until It Sleeps is actually one of my favorite Metallica songs. And by far, I think it's the best Metallica song post the Black Album in their collection. So it is our first nominee, Until It Sleeps. Our second nominee, and I hinted at this earlier, Pantera with the song Drag the Waters. Back to what the Grammys were nominating, I think this is the very best song off the great Southern Trendkill. I've always put Drag the Waters as among one of my favorite Pantera songs of all time. I'm talking top 10 for sure. So it had to be in here. I think this is a much better choice than what the Grammys put together. Our third nominee might seem out of place, but hold on a minute. Trans-Siberian Orchestra with A Mad Russian's Christmas. This Trans-Siberian Orchestra is the best Christmas music on the planet today. And it is uncompromisingly heavy. I did not originally catch this shift to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. A friend of mine said, "Hey, we've heard this band. It seems like something you would like." Went to go see them in concert. If you've never seen the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, go see them. Number one, you're going to get great music, great Christmas music, great festive environment. But this is how the old 80s heavy metal concerts were like. Lasers and fire and smoke and extravaganzas. This is how heavy metal should be portrayed. So I'm not going to ignore it just because it's a Christmas song. This is fantastic. Coming off the spectacular album, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. Check it out. Our fourth nominee, also maybe a little bit of a controversial one. Sepultura with their song Roots, Bloody Roots. Now Sepultura kind of changes their style right here. And so many of their longtime fans don't like this album. Whether you like the new album, whether you like the old style, everybody needs to come together with one thing. Roots, Bloody Roots is a fantastic song. So heavy, and kind of maybe the trademark song for Sepultura, and it had to be one of the nominees. And finally, our fifth nominee, Tool, with their song 46 and 2. There are several really good songs that I considered here. Anima has quite a list. Many people consider Anima to be Tool's best album by far. But of all those great songs, 46 and 2, my choice. I think it's the absolute best. So once again, our 5 nominees for the best heavy metal song of 1996, Until It Sleeps by Metallica. Drag the Waters, Pantera. A Mad Russian's Christmas, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Roots, Bloody Roots by Sepultura. And 46 and 2, Tool. And the winner is Metallica, Until It Sleeps. I know, there's a lot of people that are very angry at Metallica right about now. And probably a lot of people saying, what are you doing? This is a sellout. What are you doing still supporting Metallica? Let me just say, I know that there's a lot. The Grammys in particular are notorious for like giving, they screwed Metallica over when they deserved it. And for the next 20 years, they gave Metallica tons of awards they didn't deserve. But I truly believe in this case, this is well deserved. Load might not be, it might be a load of crap, but Until It Sleeps is a brilliant song and deserves all the accolades it should get. Congratulations to Metallica for winning Best Song of the Year. But now let's go to the big prize. 1996 Heavy Metal Album of the Year. Our first nominee, Arch Enemy, with their debut album, Black Earth. This is going way back in the time machine, people. This is Arch Enemy before they've had any of the female lead singers. They still had a male lead singer at this point. But it also does feature, this is early in the catalog, obviously, featuring both of the Amott brothers, Michael and his younger brother Christopher, two of the most sensational guitarists. The guitars on this album are unbelievably good. And I was kind of curious because right here in the mid-90s, you really have the rise of that melodic death metal coming out of Sweden. And you have a lot of bands being credited in that vein. You, of course, have At the Gates. They just got through with their unbelievable Slaughter of the Soul. You have Dark Tranquillity. Spoiler alert, In Flames comes out with an album this year. But you know the band I never hear about is Arch Enemy. And I think I know the reason why. I think Arch Enemy doesn't get the credit they deserve because it seems like any band that's ever gone through a series of singers, it always ends up dividing the fan base. Every time you see a band switch lead singers, you have half the fan base say, I'll never listen to him again. I liked the old singer. You have other people who come into the band maybe at that era going, I love this one. I don't want to go back to the old lead singer. It's very divisive. I'll just give you an example of Nightwish. Like if you like today's version of Nightwish, old school people will tell you you're nuts. People that like the stuff now, they're like, I don't want to go back. It's crazy. Black Sabbath was the same way. There's still people that haven't listened to Sabbath since Ozzy left. It boggles the mind. But you need to go back through the catalog of Arch Enemy, one of the most consistently good bands across the planet. So our first nominee, once again, Arch Enemy, Black Earth. From an unheralded band to one of the bands that gets a lot of the credit, our second nominee, In Flames with The Jester Race. I mentioned At the Gates, I mentioned Dark Tranquillity, and In Flames. Those are the three bands that really get the bulk of the credit for getting that whole Gothenburg style melodic, Swedish melodic death metal going. And here In Flames, the third of those albums that comes out. And this album is worthy of that. It is a brilliant album. However, the production on this album, woof, is it bad. It's a little hard for me to listen to even to this day. I love the guitar work on here. I love the songs on here. But it sounds like the lead singer. It's very muffled and seems very distant. It's almost like the band's in the studio laying down the tracks and he's in another room putting down the vocals. It just seems, maybe to my ears, maybe it's great for everybody else. I do admit when I talk about production issues, my ears have been through it, folks. I've been listening to this heavy metal loud for 50 years. So maybe I'm just not hearing right anymore, but man, the vocals on this really muffled. So, and it's a shame because this is the debut of Anders Frieden, who has been the lead singer for In Flames ever since. One of my favorite singers, tremendous vocalist. He just doesn't sound like he's even in the same county as the rest of the band. So, lots of good music on here. But if you are new to this band, go right to the title track. I think it's my favorite track on the album. Our second nominee, In Flames, with The Jester Race. Our third nominee, Opeth, with their album Morning Rise. This is the second studio album from Opeth, and it's the second masterpiece from Opeth. You might as well get used to this because this is the era of Opeth. What an amazing band, putting out some of the best music in the history of heavy metal. They're going to be a dominant force on this in the next few years, and it kind of starts right here. Their first studio album got very close to being nominated, I think just last year, but this one could not be denied. Now, the only problem with this album is, let's get it out of here. 5 of the 6 songs on this album exceed 10 minutes in length. One of the songs goes over the 20-minute mark. You guys know I'm not a big fan of that lengthy of music. Now, ironically enough, the 20-minute song is called Black Rose Immortal, and I think it's my favorite song on the album. Go figure. I also like The Night and The Silent Water. That's a close second for me. But overall, the thing about Opeth is, I don't know how to say it other than, these aren't really songs. They're like mini heavy metal symphonies, but they're done so exceptionally well. I think what's going to make Opeth such a force is they're going to harness all this brilliance and all this genius and actually show some discipline here and actually make some really good songs and not just these 10-minute, extravaganzas. Don't get me wrong, this album's great if you don't mind long, symphonic, really heavy stuff. Come right here. Opeth, Morning Rise. You knew it was going to be on here. Our fourth nominee, Pantera, with The Great Southern Trendkill. Ooh, baby, this is a really good Pantera album. I would even say, for those who have been through the Pantera catalog, this might even be better than the classic Far Beyond Driven. Now, the one thing I'll say about this is really a break in style for Pantera, where this is kind of a combination. If you were with us last year, we were talking about Phil Anselmo's band Down. This is kind of a combination of Pantera and Down, where this album, much less of the groove metal that we've come to know and love, and much more sludgy, dark, like I said, more like Down. But make no mistake, there is some great songs on here. We talked about Drag the Waters, but this album is chock full of big hits. Our fourth nominee, Pantera, The Great Southern Trendkill. Our fifth and final nomination, Corrosion of Conformity, Wise Blood. When I look at Corrosion of Conformity, I can only come to one startling conclusion. Just bad timing. Because this band should have been huge. Way back in 1991, they kind of changed their style up, and maybe that it took people a little bit of time to kind of realize the new sound. But in 1991, they came out with the sensational album Blind. Well, in 1994, they had an album that I'll say was just okay for me, Deliverance, but it had 2 big hits on it. So you would think the momentum would carry on, but here, Wise Blood, coming out just a couple years later, was a commercial flop. But oh my goodness, this is a marvelous piece of slab of heavy metal. It might be my favorite of the 3 albums I just got through talking about. Monster riffs, very sludgy. They kind of combine a little bit of that southern rock style. Like if ZZ Top went metal, right? You have to, if you've, I fear that many of you have never heard Corrosion of Conformity. Go back, start with Blind, and start moving your way forward. You're going to uncover one of the most hidden gems in the history of heavy metal. Our fifth and final nominee, Wise Blood, Corrosion of Conformity. So once again, our 5 nominees for the best heavy metal album of 1996. Arch Enemy with Black Earth. In Flames with the Jester Race. Opeth, Morning Rise. Pantera, Great Southern Trendkill. And Corrosion of Conformity, Wise Blood. And the winner is Pantera, Great Southern Trendkill. This was really close. But at this point in the 90s, Pantera is practically untouchable. This is a sensational album. I will say that, we were talking about Corrosion of Conformity a little bit, and just the bad timing of being a really good metal band in the 90s when you were getting no commercial airplay on the radios. The record labels were abandoning bands left and right. Even Pantera, who I think was the biggest heavy metal band of the 90s, even they were not immune to the drop in interest in the heavy metal music. I was looking through their discography. Every album up to this point had sold well over 1 million, double platinums across the board. This bad boy didn't even come close to selling 1 million units. It's like 700,000. So even Pantera, like their sales dropped in half right here, and that was due to I think the conspiracy, if you will, of the radio stations and the music industry just saying, we're done with heavy metal. We're not going to push it. It's going back into the underground where it belongs, and we're not going to do anything to promote it. Even Pantera suffered through this. So congratulations to Pantera, best album of the year, and congratulations to Metallica for the best song of the year. Now let's see what else the Grammys were up to in other categories of interest. For those of you familiar with the series, you'll know that way back when the Grammys originally screwed Metallica over, they tried to remedy this by giving us kind of this sister award called the Best Hard Rock Performance. It kind of goes hand in hand with the Best Heavy Metal Performance. And even though they completely botched, in my humble opinion, the Best Heavy Metal Performance, and even though this award is a year late, in my opinion, I at least agree with the sentiment. Best Hard Rock Performance goes to Smashing Pumpkins, Bullet with Butterfly Wings. I can't tell you how good Smashing Pumpkins was in the mid-90s. I know that Billy Corgan's a little bit of a controversial figure, but he can write some of the best songs going, and he was really at the peak of his powers right here. And he's a dude that also loves the world of professional wrestling, so congratulations to Billy Corgan and Smashing Pumpkins. Again, they should have won this award back in 95, but that they get it in 96, I can live with that. The best album of the year goes to Celine Dion. Again, Canadian superpower Celine Dion, one of the best female singers of all time. Not my style of music, but I'm not going to gripe too much about this. Next one I am going to complain just a little bit. Best song of the year goes to Change the World by Eric Clapton. One of the biggest problems with the Grammys is they really never got out of the 60s. They never really got out of the 70s. In my humble opinion, Eric Clapton has not been relevant to the music scene since he was in the band Cream. Like, yeah, he's a good guitar player. You want to give him some awards for playing great guitar, fine. But best song of the year, he gets a lot of awards for like best male vocalist. He brings home a lot of hardware. And I just don't see it. Again, hasn't been good since he left Cream, in my opinion. And that was back in the 60s, folks. That was a long time ago. Best new artist goes to Leanne Rimes. She is a country western star. I don't know that much about her. After I moved out of New Mexico, really didn't pay much attention to country western music. I think she might be the person who does like some of the themes for like the Monday Night Football or whatever. But who they should have given it to, I have a soft spot in my heart for No Doubt. A very good band. And once again, I will just say, although 96 was a weak year for metal, I'll concede that. Year after year, we never see heavy metal bands nominated as newcomers of the year. The metal bands have to do all the work, get the recognition, do all the sales, do all of that, and maybe down the road the Grammys start to nominate them after the fact, but they never are on that cutting edge, which is just another sign that they were not really ever interested in really understanding and following heavy metal music. Best rock album goes to Sheryl Crow. Best rock song goes to Tracy Chapman. And I asked the question, Sheryl Crow and Tracy Chapman, is that even rock? Like, it's on the very, like, weak T side of the rock realm for sure. Once again, Smashing Pumpkins, anybody? Soundgarden? Like, Soundgarden, I sat here and contemplated whether I would put them into the hard rock or the heavy metal categories, because Soundgarden's always kind of been in that kind of big family, big tent. Now, Soundgarden's gone really mellow, so I decided at the end of the day, I just couldn't, with clear conscience, put them in any sort of heavy metal category. But for rock, Soundgarden probably has the best album of the year, if we're being clear, being really consistent and being truthful about things. Sheryl Crow, Tracy Chapman, terrible choices by the Grammys. Once again, I think my nominations for Best Song and Album, much better for heavy metal, but I think my nominations for Best New Artist, Best Rock, Best Songs and Albums of the Year, across the board are better. And I don't even listen to a lot of that music. So there you go. It's not that hard, Grammys. Figure it out. Anyway, that's our show for the week. We're going to do this every Tuesday. We're going year by year to talk about the best heavy metal music. We're in 1996, so our next year is going to be 1997. I will say back to 1996 was a bit of a weak year. But one of the reasons is because 95, excellent. Go check out last year's video on 1995. I think you'll enjoy it. And next week, we're going to be talking about 1997, another fantastic year. So if you're like, 90s weren't my cup of tea, tune in for our big show in a couple of weeks for 1997. Also, if you're a fan of the Deftones, a big band back in the 90s, we're going to be doing the top 10 albums of Deftones either next week or the following week. Been putting that together. Love me some Deftones. And I've been talking about doing that discography for a while. It's finally going to arrive. And you don't want to miss it. So subscribe, ring the bell, get notified, feed the YouTube algorithm. And we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. Take care.